I've lived in the same two-story house for 43 years. My late wife, Ellen, picked the paint color for the kitchen herself. A soft yellow, she said, looked like sunshine even on rainy days. Now the sunshine was gone. It was Thanksgiving and my children, Mark and Lisa, had offered to host here instead of at their own homes. Offered. That's code for, Dad, we want to rearrange your house, shove your recliner in the corner, and act like we're doing you a favor. From the moment they arrived, something felt off. Mark's wife, Jessica, was suddenly very interested in helping me with my paperwork. Lisa's husband, Trent, kept making casual comments about open floor plans and how this place has so much potential. Then, during dinner prep, I caught Jessica whispering in the pantry, "Once the title's in our name, we can finally rip out that outdated kitchen." I froze. Title? Our name? That was my kitchen, my title, my house. I didn't say a word. I just kept carving the turkey, my smile as fake as the cranberry sauce from a can. The next morning, Mark asked if he could borrow my office to make a work call. I walked in an hour later to find him rummaging in my filing cabinet. "Looking for the Wi-Fi password," he said, shutting the drawer a little too fast. Right? Because the Wi-Fi password is usually hidden between my mortgage papers and Ellen's will. By that afternoon, I had overheard enough snippets of conversation to stitch together their plan. They were meeting with an appraiser. A quitclaim deed was involved. They wanted renovations started by January. Translation: they were planning to get my house in their name while I was still very much alive, and kick me into something smaller and easier for you, Dad. I'm a retired contracts lawyer. I've spent decades watching people try to outclause each other. And my kids, my own flesh and blood, thought they could play me like an old fool? That's when the plan began forming. Quietly, invisibly, and with teeth. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat in my dimly lit office. The smell of Ellen's old lavender candle was still faint in the air. She always lit it when she needed to think. So I lit it too. Then I picked up the phone and called Harold. Harold and I go way back, 52 years of friendship, from law school pranks to retirement golf games. He's a retired judge, and he has the kind of brain that never really stops working. I told him everything, every overheard whisper, every suspicious favor. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Harold chuckled. "Jim, my friend, they think they're clever, but they're amateurs. Let's make this fun." We devised the start of a plan. 1. Move all original property documents out of the house. 2. Create dummy files, fake versions of the deed, mortgage statements, even bank account info that looked convincing enough to fool a quick snoop. 3. Wait for them to make the first big move, then flip the table. The next morning, I played the part of the oblivious dad. I wore my most worn-out sweater, shuffled around the kitchen like I was half asleep, and let Lisa help me sort through some old papers. Every time she thought I wasn't looking, her eyes darted to the manila folders on my desk. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. 2 days later, the dummy files were ready. They were good. If you didn't know any better, you'd think they were the real deal: the property deed, my will, my insurance paperwork. I put them in the filing cabinet in plain sight. Meanwhile, the real documents were now in a safe deposit box at the bank across town, under lock and key. It didn't take long. That evening, while Mark and Jessica thought I was in the garage, I walked quietly down the hall toward my office. The door was cracked open. Jessica was bent over my filing cabinet, phone in hand, taking pictures of the deed. I stepped into the doorway. She jumped so hard she dropped her phone. "Oh, Jim, I was just organizing some of your paperwork for you." I smiled, that slow, warm, grandfatherly smile that makes people think you believe their lie. "You're a real help, Jessica. Thank you." She relaxed, thinking she'd gotten away with it. But really, she'd just taken the bait. The following afternoon, I decided it was time to collect some insurance, and I don't mean the kind that comes with a monthly premium. Harold had suggested this little trick. If you want someone to admit to their own scheme, just make them think you're halfway on board. So, while Lisa was in the kitchen making tea, I wandered in and sighed loudly. You know, honey, this old place is a lot of work for me alone. Maybe you're right about making things simpler. Her head snapped up. That fake smile again. Oh, Dad, we only want what's best for you. You shouldn't have to worry about upkeep at your age. Translation, hand over the keys. I nodded thoughtfully, keeping my tone light. Well, if I did agree to changes, what would happen next? And just like that, she started talking. The appraisal, the renovations, the smooth transition. She didn't even notice I'd placed my phone on the counter, recording the whole thing. The next morning, I told the family I was going to get groceries. Instead, I drove to my bank. Harold had already called ahead. We updated my will again. Not only was the house safe, but I also added a little clause. If anyone tried to coerce me into signing away my property while I was alive, they'd be permanently disinherited. I also authorized the bank to notify Harold if anyone other than me requested a change to my accounts. On my way out, the bank manager, an old poker buddy, winked. Sounds like you're setting up for a royal flush, Jim. By the weekend, my kid's patience was wearing thin. Mark cornered me in the living room while Lisa distracted herself by organizing my photo albums. Dad, we really need you to sign the transfer papers before the appraiser comes next week. It'll just make things smoother. I looked him straight in the eye. You know, son, you might just be right. Bring me the papers tonight after dinner. His face lit up. He thought the game was over, but in reality, we were just about to reach the final hand, and I was holding all the cards. Dinner was roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and tense smiles. Mark barely touched his plate, his leg bouncing under the table. Jessica kept checking her watch. Finally, after dessert, Mark disappeared into the guest room and came back holding a thick envelope. All right, Dad, here it is. Just sign at the bottom, and everything's taken care of. I took the envelope slowly, like it was nothing more than a gas bill. Inside, exactly what I expected. A quitclaim deed transferring full ownership of my home to Mark and Lisa for the purposes of estate planning. Estate planning. That's a fancy way of saying give us the house now. I read it out loud, every word. The air in the room got heavier with each sentence. When I finished, I set the papers on the table. So, you've been planning to take my house out from under me while I'm still alive, without telling me the full truth. Silence. Jessica's hand froze halfway to her wine glass. Lisa looked at the floor. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small, sleek black device. My phone. With one tap, the room filled with Lisa's recorded voice from the kitchen 2 days earlier. Once the title's in our name, we can finally rip out that outdated kitchen. Then my own voice on the recording. What would happen next? And her answer crystal clear. We'll have the appraisal, start renovations, and move you into something smaller. Mark's jaw tightened. Jessica muttered, "That's out of context." I smiled. The context is crystal clear. Then I slid another envelope across the table, this one containing a notarized copy of my updated will. Not only are you not getting the house, but if you ever try something like this again, you're cut out of the will entirely. Permanently. That clause is already in effect. The next day, my extended family arrived for our annual post-Thanksgiving brunch. I decided that if Mark and Lisa wanted to make plans behind my back, the least I could do was make their intentions public. Halfway through coffee, I stood up. I have an announcement. Apparently, my children here had a plan to speed up my downsizing. Fortunately, I had my own plan. I summarized everything. The whispers, the fake papers, the recording, gasps from the cousins. A shame on you from Aunt Ruth. Mark tried to defend himself. Lisa claimed it was all for my own good, but the damage was done. Their faces were redder than the cranberry sauce. After brunch, they left early. No hugs. No "see you soon, Dad," Harold called that evening. Sounds like you played it perfectly, Jim. That's a checkmate if I've ever seen one. I leaned back in my recliner. The same recliner they'd shoved in the corner a week ago. Now it was back in its rightful spot, facing the fireplace. The house was quiet again. Mine again. And the best part? They'd never see it coming the next time I decided to play a little chess. Because here's the thing about underestimating old men like me. We've had decades to learn the rules. And when the time comes, we know exactly how to break them. The house was quiet. Too quiet. For years, Mark and Lisa had called at least once a week. Now, 7 days. No calls. No texts. Only silence. The kind you get after a storm that's left some wreckage behind. Could have reached out. I didn't. When someone tries to take your home, you don't hand them a lifeline right after you've cut their rope. Instead, I spent the week doing something better, making small, deliberate changes. Called my attorney to make the will changes airtight. Added Harold as my official financial guardian in the event I'm incapacitated. Installed security cameras in the office and hallways. If they ever tried something again, I wouldn't just catch them. I'd broadcast it if I wanted. 3 weeks later, a Christmas card arrived in the mail. From Lisa. It was one of those pre-printed happy holidays from our family to yours, cards with a smiling photo of her, Trent, and the kids in matching sweaters. Inside, a single handwritten line. Hope you're well. Let's put the past behind us. I laughed out loud. Put the past behind us? No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a request to move on. Conveniently leaving out the part where they tried to steal my house. I wrote back, Dear Lisa, I've put the past behind me. The security system is working great. Merry Christmas. Dad. By New Year's Eve, my cousin Ruth invited me over for her annual champagne toast. Half the family was there, including Mark. He avoided me all night, but after a few glasses, he finally walked over. Dad, I didn't mean for things to go that way. I thought we were helping. I sipped my champagne slowly. Helping yourselves, maybe? He opened his mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. Son, let me give you a piece of advice. When you think you've outsmarted someone, make sure they're not 3 moves ahead. You can't win a game if you don't know the rules. The first week of January, Harold and I met for lunch. I slid him a folder, a fresh copy of my will, my property deed, and all the legal protections we'd set up. You're locked down tighter than Fort Knox now, he said with a grin. We also set up a small trust in Ellen's name, funded by a portion of my savings, to be donated to the local library when I pass. Not only would that honor her memory, it also meant one less thing my kids could try to manage for me. 2 months later, Mark and Lisa came by just to visit. They were polite, almost too polite, but I could see it in their eyes, the wariness, the unspoken acknowledgement that they'd underestimated me. Before they left, I walked them to the door and said, I know you two love this house, so do I. That's why it'll never be yours while I'm alive, and maybe not after either. But you're welcome here, as guests. They nodded, stiff smiles in place, and walked out. I closed the door and locked it. A small click that sounded like victory. These days, I still see Mark and Lisa, but the relationship has changed. They're careful now, respectful, not because they suddenly value me more, but because they know I'm not as easy to move off the board as they thought. The house still stands. Ellen's yellow kitchen walls still bright as ever, and I still sit in my recliner, right where it belongs. They thought they'd already won. They were wrong, and I didn't just win the game, I made sure they'd never forget the lesson. Old age doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous, if you know how to play your cards.